Hey, AgGrad Nation, we are live. We're running a little bit late tonight. Had some technical difficulties on my end here, but we got them sorted out, and we are back for another episode of AgGrad Live, another career spotlight episode. These have been a lot of fun. I think this is actually the fourth or maybe fifth one we've done in a row here now. Plan to do 10 this fall and 10 this spring, where we get to just reach out to somebody who's working and doing interesting work and learn about what their daily life looks like, and learn a little bit about what it took to get there. And the guy, Tony Robbins, the success guy, always says that success leaves clues. So if we can look at successful people and gather some clues from them about how they made it to where they are, and also learn a little bit about what they do to see if it might be appealing for you, I find that to be really valuable, much more valuable than just checking out a job description or a job posting online. So hopefully you're getting some great value from these interviews and from learning about these folks and what they do. And I think this one's going to be a really, really relevant one for a lot of you, because I know several people in the AgGrad community are interested in nonprofit work, but sometimes it seems like maybe it's a little bit tough to get into and have access to. So we have on the show today, and I'll bring her on. This is Grace Norman, and Grace is with the Texas Hunger Initiative at Baylor University. She's going to talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be in nonprofit management. Grace, you are on the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate your patience. And I can already tell everyone watching that you have a lot of grit just by the fact that you haven't totally written us off when we couldn't get you up on AgGrad Live sooner.
Happy to be here. Thanks for working with me as well.
Yeah, and so this is going to be fun, because just in the last 2 weeks, I have had somebody reach out to me directly and say, I'm really interested in working for a nonprofit. Postings I see are in sales and operations, all for private companies, which is great, but I'd really love to work for a nonprofit. And what kind of advice can you give just out the gate here for somebody that's in that situation?
Yeah, so I'll be completely honest from the start and say that finding a job for me was a struggle, or more of a struggle than I expected it to be, because I knew that from the outset I wanted to work in a nonprofit, or potentially for a state or federal agency, but something in the public sector. And I graduated with my undergrad and went straight into my master's. But toward that last semester of my master's work and starting to hunt for a job, I applied to so many jobs each week and was really coming up empty. And I'll just say a couple of things that I found helpful. One is keep at it. Even if it takes longer than you think it's going to take, keep at it. Had I not found the job I did and been able to start working as soon as I graduated, and I was very fortunate to have been able to have done that, one of my professors recommended for the nonprofit space, go where you want to work and search there. So I was at school at A&M and in College Station. And if I had wanted to work in Pennsylvania, for example, to take his advice, I should have moved where I wanted to be and then search for a job there, which is terrifying. If you're sitting, looking at needing to pay off student loans and get employed, that just seems like a huge step. But I do know people who took that step right out of the gate and were successful in that. So a lot of nonprofit work is place-based, and I think that would help. Job search engines such as Idealist were, my top go-tos. And so I would recommend that, as well as paying attention to websites such as the Foundation Center and Nonprofit Times that industry folks are in, and then finding your space. If you're interested in the food space or in the ag production space, then see if there's something within that field that the nonprofit industry is already advertising, for example. And then finally, my final piece of advice in even finding something you're interested in. When I was doing my internship as a graduate student, my supervisor encouraged me. Well, one of my responsibilities was to read the Washington Post every day and alert her to anything that would be relevant to what we were working on, which was, volunteerism and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to ask you. What was it that you were working on? Volunteerism. Okay.
Yeah, I was working for the Points of Light Foundation, and it was an over the summer internship, really working in their GR and policy shop for, funding for communities that were, wanting to really dig deep and needed the support of volunteers through things like the AmeriCorps program. But through reading the Washington Post and doing, that aspect of my daily responsibilities, at the end of my internship, we just went to lunch, and she was, basically doing an exit interview with me, and wanted to know, when I was reading the Post, outside of what I was paying attention to for our work, what stuck with me. What did I find myself gravitating toward? And it dawned on me that outside of what I was, directly focused on for work, I was really interested in articles about food, whether it was new restaurants or access to food, a food pantry opening, a community rallying around, a backpack program on the weekends, for example. And that was the first time that I thought I could make something like this part of my future, if that makes sense. And so those were helpful for me in finding my interests. I would say in finding a job, keep at it and use tools like Idealist and stay plugged into listservs like Nonprofit Times, and identify in your local community foundations you may be interested, as well as the United Way, and use your networking skills. Meet with people, even if it's not even take them to coffee, but just to, do an informational interview with them. You can get a long way just by saying you're a student interested in this space. And so use that to your advantage.
So is it how you even landed your job? I know you got this advice to go out to Pennsylvania or go on site wherever you needed to go. I know you didn't have to do that, but how did you end up getting the job you had?
Yeah. So like I said, in that last semester of my grad school year, it was the spring semester, several friends and I just decided, okay, every Wednesday night, we're going to get together and we're going to either spend an hour searching and applying for jobs, or we have to apply for at least one job. And so, as many as we could apply for in an hour, or if it was a really extensive application, then the one application. But that group accountability was helpful. And I can't tell you how many I applied for. The position with the Texas Hunger Initiative that I applied for was in a field office in their Lubbock regional office. I applied for a child hunger outreach position, and THI was the first organization to call back and offer me an interview. And that was deep into that spring semester. So again, I was very fortunate to even have received such a call back, but that's how I wound up getting connected with the organization. I think I saw the post through monster.com probably.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about what your looks like now.
Yeah. So like I said, I started in a field office. We have 8 offices across the state, and I was in Lubbock doing community outreach. And about 2 years ago, I moved into our central office located at Baylor in Waco, Texas, and am currently serving in the government relations manager role. So my day-to-day looks different every day, but I'd say that some of the projects that I've gotten to dig into that I've really enjoyed have been, especially in the most recent political climate that we're in, and the administration change, as the president issued a new budget, and then as both the House and the Senate are considering new budgets. I enjoyed diving into those budgets and understanding the implications for the proposals and what that could mean for programs we were specifically interested in. The Farm Bill is the major piece of legislation which governs the SNAP program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance. But it also, it governs commodities and dairy and you name it on the ag side of things. And so even personally, outside of my professional interests, personally, I was interested in seeing the implications that this would have on cotton or on dairy. And so that was just something that was a thrill to get to. The project, I think, probably took me 2 days to really dig into it, but I enjoyed doing that. Similarly, I took the president's budget one step further. one of the aspects that and programs that we really are interested in as an organization is making sure that kiddos in after school enrichment programs have access to meals after school. And the presidential budget actually proposed a cut to an after school enrichment program. And so it's not necessarily true that those enrichment programs all have meal sites, for example. But if you're cutting the enrichment program, then participation in those meal programs would probably decline. So I spent a weekend just going through data sets of the budget and where these programs are in Texas, and what this could potentially mean for them. Are those programs already meal sites? Could they potentially be meal sites? And just understanding, something that seems like a very small aspect of something like, a federal budget and the presidential proposed budget was something that I at least enjoyed getting to understand what impact this could have here at home.
And so when you do that, you like go online and Google like the president's budget, and you like print it out, and then you just like find the areas that you're interested in and just read it. It seems daunting to me, but
it is. Some of the documents, are not long. Others are longer. I would say that practically speaking, for that budget, for example, then we have, through our research piece, had submitted public information requests. And so I could see what organizations had submitted applications and were serving after school meals. So I took data that we had in-house that we had cleaned up and compared it to what I was seeing in, again, that budget. But any massive piece of whether it's legislation or a document, I would say the Control F function on your computer to do a quick word search has probably become one of my best friends as a professional. And then you just learn keywords. I think that's something, getting into the professional world, don't be afraid don't be afraid for needing that learning curve, and I think it's okay. You probably will underestimate what's necessary for that learning curve. I thought, okay, 3 months, that'd probably be good for me. But I'm learning something new every day. And I've been in this space for close to 4.5, 5 years now. So the learning curve will always stick with you. And I think as long as you approach your professional life with a learning mentality and posture of humility, then you'll go pretty far.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I can remember getting hired straight out of college and them telling me, I went in the private sector doing grain merchandising. They said, well, really, to really learn this job, it's going to take you 3 years. And I'm like taking that as a challenge, thinking, oh, I'll show them. I'll show them I can do it in 3 months. And it just is. It's true. It takes time. You have to be put in a million different situations and learn how to react in those situations. And it really does have to become a lifetime of learning, no matter what field you're in. So tell me about kind of where all this leads. So you do this analysis, which it sounds like you were doing on your weekend. You're really just that interested. You wanted to go after it. If you find something that's interesting where it has big ramifications, what do you do with that, and kind of what's the process from there?
Yeah, so I think this will reflect the fact that I'm still in a learning curve, being in this position now for about 6-7 months probably. But I think overall, whatever I come across, I want to equip our staff, both in the field and at our central office, to understand what they're seeing. And especially our staff in the field, our field offices have been open now for I don't know, maybe 5 years. And so they are being viewed as good resources in their community and have been there for a good period of time. And people are approaching them, asking them questions. And I want to be able to do the homework for them or with them, so that we're not all having to reinvent the wheel. So one of my priorities is to equip them and just let them know, like, hey, here's what this means, and really translate it for them. The other thing is, because I work with a team of folks in our central office, is equipping them. And then I think the final step is, once we're educated on whether it's something new or taking an issue that we, have that expertise and on the ground experience in, is educating the stakeholders. And those could be elected or appointed officials as you think of them in the most traditional sense, but also getting folks here at home in your own community to understand what these programs are, just the work that you're doing and what impact it makes. Again, I'm in, the nutrition space as far as, the supplemental nutrition assistance program, summer after school meals, school breakfast for kiddos, really wanting to make sure that all Texans have access to 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. However, I think the universal lesson in all of that is know what you know, and don't be afraid to tell people that you know it, and be an expert in your own space, hold your ground, and then educate people about what you do. Because we all bring our own lens and our own context to things, whether it's our upbringing or what we were exposed to in college. And there are misconceptions around anything and everything. And so educating people and having genuine conversations with them is what we try to do. So to take the work that I do, educate ourselves, educate our staff, and then educate key players, stakeholders, or decision makers in this space. And that could be, somebody on your city council or somebody on the board of a nonprofit, or, all the way up to the top, somebody in the House of Representatives or in the Senate.
Yeah, is there one experience in your career so far that you can point to where you're just like, that moment, it just felt like all worthwhile? Just like one experience where it just felt like that's why I do what I do.
Yeah. So I think I opened this by saying that we're not a direct service organization. We're a capacity building organization. So we work in communities, work alongside stakeholders and the movers and shakers in communities to help them think and act strategically about how to address hunger in their communities. And I started out in our Lubbock field office. And so one experience that I point to as being pretty formative there that I, hope to bring with me both currently where I am, but also moving forward, is the issue of food insecurity is not an us versus them issue. It's not the haves versus the have-nots. And one experience I had in Lubbock was working not just with organizations that were doing good work, and there are so many there, and I mean, in every community that are doing really good work, but the opportunity I had on a fairly regular basis to interact with individuals and families who are experiencing for a short period of time or have experienced for a while food insecurity and not knowing where their next meal is coming from. And I worked with a team in Lubbock, and my teammate was the one that really implemented things. But in overseeing a project called Snapshots of Hunger, it was a photo voice project, which has been a trend in telling stories and impact of what's going on. And so we worked with local organizations and identified individuals who were experiencing or had previous experience being food insecure or relying on whether it was assistance from a food pantry or knowing that just times are tight. And we had them take pictures for a few weeks and developed photos and actually organized a photo exhibit in an art, I don't know if it was an art studio, but in a public space downtown, and worked with these individuals to really, I can't even say that we helped them tell their story, because they told it themselves better than I could have ever imagined, but equipping them to tell it to an audience. And watching them share their story and watching other people in the community recognize that this is an issue, and it's an issue that somebody right next door to you could be experiencing, was really formative in my experience. And I'm still friends with people back there. I got a text message from one of them a couple of days ago. And so just that this was not, it's not a fleeting issue. And it's something that, one of them looked me in the eyes when we were talking about the project and, would you be interested in sharing your story this way? And when we were talking just about the issue of, sometimes you may not know where your next meal is coming from, she looked me in the eyes and said, I thought I was literally the only person that struggled with this, and did not realize that she was sitting in a room at that moment with other people who were experiencing this, because it's not necessarily an issue that when you're experiencing it, you want to talk about, and that kiddos, when they're in school, it's not something that they're necessarily talking about with their friends. That's not why they want to be a part of, a program or how they want to be identified. And so food insecurity may look different from what we would envision, but it's definitely an issue.
Wow. Very rewarding to be a part of telling those stories. Question from Joanna here, actually, and a good question because it's one that I had thought about too, which is, she asks, when you were mentioning that you always wanted to work in the public sector, what particularly about the public sector, what is it about nonprofit work where you're just like, that's what I want to do? Because, I mean, obviously, nonprofit work's pretty diverse. So what is it about the category that attracts you?
I don't really know how to answer that question. I'll say that everywhere I've lived, I've volunteered in some capacity. Usually I've chosen an organization and stuck with them for a good while. And I think that exposure, in high school was probably when working with Habitat, felt like this is an organization doing worthwhile work. And I think I thought, if nothing else, I want to continue to be plugged in to the nonprofit sector. And then it wasn't until I actually got to college, and I was an ag development undergrad, and one of my professors challenged me to take graduate level courses before I graduated. And I didn't know that was a possibility. And so through the course of just exploring what graduate programs were out there, realizing that at A&M, they had a nonprofit management program at the Bush School. Just not even realizing this was a formal opportunity. And so exploring when I was in college and exploring what the Bush School had to offer, where their students had been placed in internships and had obtained a job after graduation, I think solidified for me that I wanted to work in this space. I'd say back in high school, I thought I would just want to volunteer in this space. And then I think through experiences in undergrad and grad school, it was confirmed for me.
Very cool. Well, Grace, I know there are people out there that are kind of like, sounds like you were, which is looking for a foot in the door. How do I get into nonprofit management? And I know you are very accessible. So if they want to reach out to you and ask you more questions about this or about the Texas Hunger Initiative, how could they do that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to keep in touch via email. So shoot me an email at grace_Norman@Baylor.edu. You could also check out the Texas Hunger Initiative on social media, and also our website is texashunger.org. But happy to answer any questions from here on out.
Yeah, I think what Grace said earlier about you've just got to keep at it. And part of keeping at it is reaching out to people. So if you're watching this right now and you're interested in this type of work and don't feel like you have any contacts, Grace is offering her email address to you here to reach out to her and learn a little bit about what it's like and maybe help get plugged in. So, Grace, I really appreciate you being on the show. This has been a lot of fun, and it's been something brand new to me. I am a Texas resident, and I hang my head in shame because I did not know about the Texas Hunger Initiative before at Baylor University. So it's good to learn about that and the work you guys are doing, because it sounds like you're kind of doing a ton of work behind the scenes. Is that right?
We hope to. We hope to just work with communities that are doing great work all the time.
Great. Well, for those watching, if you are interested in this type of work or any of the AgGrad Live episodes we've had of Career Spotlights, go to this URL. It's jobs.aggrad.com. You can fill out a profile, we will keep in touch with you about opportunities that are coming up, and it will get you accessible to employers, both in the nonprofit world and in the for-profit world. So appreciate you tuning in. And Grace, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.